if they hadn't said something different 3 years ago. We aren't talking about in Alabama a district that existed when my grandmother was alive. We're talking about a district that was drawn in 2023 because there are injustices that are still being placed. We're talking about Memphis, where we're not like, it's not just one person across the street. They split a whole city into three to...
Kevin O'Leary can be incredibly condescending when he wants to be. In this clip, Bakari Sellers has completely had it almost swearing at O'Leary live on air. Abby Phillip actually has to step in and stop the panel. Though honestly, it's way more pushback than she gave Scott Jennings when he threatened Adam Mockler. Let's watch the full clip. Make sure you stick around until the end, because that's where the real friction happens. Let's get into it.
A battle over redistricting that is playing out at the Supreme Court as Republicans and Democrats try to gain an edge in November's midterm elections. Today, the court's conservative majority cleared the way for Alabama to use a new congressional map that would eliminate a district currently held by a black Democrat. The Supreme Court offered no explanation in its order, which tosses out a lower court decision that blocked the use of that 2023 map. But Justice Sonia Sotomayor joined the court's other two liberals and said that the order was inappropriate and that it will cause confusion as voters head into the polls in the next week's election. The decision hands yet another victory to Republicans just days after Virginia's Supreme Court struck down a measure that would have allowed Democrats to redraw congressional maps in their favor. Virginia Democrats are now asking the Supreme Court to reinstate that map. That seems like a bit of a Hail Mary pass there on the part of Virginia Democrats. But the broader issue is that, especially when you look at what's happening in Alabama, there's already voting underway in that state. They are planning to toss out that map, go with a new map that favors Republicans, eliminates a district. And then you have the President Trump, sending a message to South Carolina, your home state, Bakari, saying the South Carolina State Senate has a big vote tomorrow on redistricting. He says Republicans be bold and courageous, just like the Republicans of the great state of Tennessee were last week. Move the U.S. House primaries to August. Leave the rest on the same schedule. Everything will be fine. Get it done. So we're going beyond new maps here. Now we're tinkering with the calendar. People are voting. Maybe those votes get thrown out. It's chaos.
I mean, not only is it chaos, but you're literally throwing out votes, as you said. I mean, I watched 60 Minutes with Governor Landry from Louisiana throwing out votes, and he chuckled about it. In South Carolina, people have already voted from overseas, and you chuckle about it. But I want to take a step back and look at this from a 50,000-foot view, to be completely honest. I think Ashley and I have to wrestle with the fact that we are going to be the first generation to actually leave this country worse than the one that we inherited. And I think for black millennials, the progress that our parents and grandparents gave us that we're watching being ripped away from us is something that our generation is going to have to really wrestle with in figuring out how we get out of this conundrum. If somebody fell asleep in 1896 and woke up today in 2026, they would simply say the only difference is now Negroes have a TV show and we wear nice suits. They swapped out Klan hoods for Brooks Brothers suits. And that is the problem. I mean, Plessy v. Ferguson was 7-1, and it gave birth to 50 years of Jim Crow. What we have with this court right now, what we're seeing is watching people who have fought and died and bled so that we would have access to the ballot box, so that we would have access to our voices being heard in Congress, being ripped away. And I think that there is a casual laughter from people we believe to be our friends on the right who are showing us true colors today, because the most sacred, or one of the most sacred acts you have in the United States of America is the ability to cast a ballot and elect someone and send them to Congress, the State House, or a mayoral seat that represents your interest. And now black folks throughout the South are being silenced. And I don't find that to be a laughing matter.
Well, you know, Scott, I mean, if this were just about partisan gerrymandering, I think that would be one conversation. But I think part of what's happening right now is that we're in the middle of a political cycle and maps are changing. I was reading an article today about Tennessee, and the lead of the article was two neighbors literally across the street from each other, one white and one black, now in Memphis in different districts. So it's more than just, are we redistricting according to partisanship? It's also, what are we doing in terms of creating a precedent for the use of power across the country, in red states and in blue states?
Yeah, it's a good question about redrawing in the middle of an ongoing election. In the case of Louisiana, they didn't have a choice. The Supreme Court said their maps were unconstitutional. They had to redraw it, and so what they chose to do was I think what they'll choose to do is move the House back to the fall, and they'll leave the Senate primary in place, which is actually happening right now. So I get the argument about a little bit of confusion for voters. I mean, around the edges of congressional districts, you're always going to have some areas where, one person on one side of the street, one person on the other. I live on the very western edge of a congressional district in Kentucky, in fact. If I might respectfully debate Bakari on this for a moment, to me, I heard you say that people are losing representation, people are losing their voice. No voter has lost their voice at all. No one's been disenfranchised. Every voter in America before these court rulings could go cast a ballot this November, and every voter in America, white, black, or otherwise, can go cast a ballot right now. The lines may be changing, but every voter still has the same amount of voting power, one vote, that they had. It's just that this Supreme Court said your race doesn't necessarily have to dictate your political identity. The fact that you're an American citizen and your franchise gives you one vote, that is your political identity. And it is incumbent upon both parties, Republicans and Democrats, to run people who speak not to just one constituency, but all American interests. To me, that's how the November election should be run.
Yeah, please.
Go ahead, Ashley.
I might agree with you if they hadn't said something different 3 years ago. We aren't talking about in Alabama a district that existed when my grandmother was alive. We're talking about a district that was drawn in 2023 because there are injustices that are still being placed. We're talking about Memphis, where it's not just one person across the street. They split a whole city into three to make black voters have less power in House maps. The Voting Rights Act, which actually was the last time it actually was reauthorized, was under your boss, George W. Bush. It used to be a bipartisan thing. It used to be clear that the backdrop of this country, there is discrimination now. There was pervasive discrimination when the law was signed into law during the Civil Rights Movement. We can all go into our partisan corners, but to act like what is happening right now is not a direct attack on black voters' power, black voters' ability to represent themselves. Now, we had this conversation yesterday, Scott. Black voters are allowed to elect whoever they want. And in 2024, they did. They elected a black Democrat in that new district in Alabama. That black Democrat went through a primary of 13 people, and black voters found the agency to come and decide how that primary now will be erased. And put a black Republican up in that district if you want black voters to have a choice. But they're not. That's not what's happening. It is a dissemination of distribution of black power. And to call it anything other than that, I just think is being historically ignoring the past of our country and pretending like we're not trying to drive our country to a different type of future.
Ellie, Ashley just raised an important point, which is that this Supreme Court in 2023 said that Alabama needed to have that second district.
Yep.
And they did so on the basis of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Let me just read a part of the ruling. This was written by the Chief Justice John Roberts. He says, we held over 40 years ago that even Section 1 of the 15th Amendment prohibits only purposeful discrimination. The prior decisions of this court foreclose any argument that Congress may not, pursuant to Section 2 of the 15th Amendment, outlaw voting practices that are discriminatory in effect. Okay. Discriminatory in effect. So now they're saying the exact opposite, and they didn't even bother to explain the contradiction in their decision today.
Yeah, the whole world of politics and voting is changing really quick, to your point, Bakari. The world is very different now than it was 2 weeks ago because we got the Louisiana decision, which essentially ended the Voting Rights Act.
Plessy v. Ferguson,
right.
Just for context, was from where?
Right.
Louisiana.
Okay, and people's heads are spinning because you're Alabama, Louisiana, right, Tennessee,
South Carolina.
Let me give you sort of a universal theory how to make sense of all this craziness. Whether it's good or bad, you all will continue to debate, but I'll tell you how the best I can make of what's happening right now with the law. First of all, it is essentially up to the states. And when I say the states, I mean the legislatures, the voters, governors, the state courts, right? And if a state wants to partisan gerrymander to an extreme, for the most part, they can. If you're California and you're 60-40 Democrat and you want to go all blue, basically you can. If you're Texas, opposite, you want to go all red, you basically can. That's rule number one. Rule number two is every state has its own rules, and they vary tremendously. Sometimes it has to go to referendum. Sometimes it has to go to the governor. The states have to follow their own rules. That's Virginia, which did not follow its own rules. That's why Virginia is going to lose their map, and I don't think the Supreme Court's going to intervene. And then point three, and this is what we're all talking about now, is the Supreme Court has changed their position from even a few years ago to where it's now basically, we're not going to police any of this unless there's racial discrimination either way. So you can no longer try to specifically carve out a majority black district or two. And if states have done that, or if people want to say states have done this, this is what's happening in Alabama, in South Carolina, probably in Tennessee. They can say, well, that was a district that we carved out to be specifically majority black. Now we want to undo it. And that's why this is happening day by day, hour by hour. It's a whole new world out there.
One of the interesting things about Tennessee that we should also keep in mind is that that Tennessee district that they did away with existed prior to the Voting Rights Act. So Memphis, as a city, has been a district even before they were trying to rectify racial discrimination with the Voting Rights Act. So, you know, we're going to start to see maybe Virginia might try again and create that. Maybe they might try to create an 11-0 map, because now, according to the Supreme Court, you can. We might live in a country where all around the country we have states where the minority political party has effectively zero representation in Congress.
I think everybody should take confidence in the fact the Supreme Court basically supported one vote, one person, guaranteed in perpetuity, and the rest is just map wars. And I think we should get used to it. And I think it's, as you said, a state-based situation. Add this to the mix. At the end of the day, the state decides at the state level. It's in the Constitution. Get over it.
So the problem with that sentiment is that you were born in 1954.
Yeah.
Okay, you're
Very popular.
You're 71.
Yeah.
Right. In 1954,
By the way, I'm a vampire. I'm never gonna die,
during your lifetime, we've actually had Brown v. Board of Education.
I remember.
Yeah, Brown v. Board of Education. I don't know how you remember it. I think you were like 2 months old. But
But
I'm not finished yet. Let me finish my thought.
Drill back to 54.
Yeah, because you're still alive, right? And so there's an entire generation of people. Brown v. Board, it overturned Plessy v. Ferguson of 1896. My point is that my mother was born in 1951. She desegregated schools. My father was shot in the Civil Rights Movement. Those people.
Let him finish.
I'm going to finish because you're being utterly disrespectful.
Not at all.
So I'm going to finish this comment. So what I'm telling you is that there are people in this country who fought, died, and bled for the right to vote. Don't be a dick. Just understand.
Okay. Bakari,
please.
I'm not a dick. I'm pointing something out to you. The Constitution is being upheld.
Hey,
do you have a problem with that? Do you have a problem with the Constitution of the United States of America?
Bakari, I'm going to stop you because I just want everybody to reset with a modicum of respect at this table. Please stop.
I want you to understand that there is a
Mr.
price.
To you,
there's a price that was paid for this right. There is a price that we uphold, and whether or not you value that, whether or not you value that or not, there are people who bled, sweat, and died, and were imprisoned for access to the ballot box. And what we're seeing throughout the South is that their voice, their vote, their representation, and people who have lived experiences to represent them are not being sent to Congress or where they need to go.
This debate, by the way, is happening among the justices. If you look at the Louisiana decision, the conservatives are saying, we've made great progress. It's time to let go of this, of using racial discrimination.
And that's why I utilize the description of
and the liberal justices say exactly what you just said, Bakari, which is there's a history here that we're overlooking.
But Ellie, I mean, the 3 years have passed since 2023 and 2026.
Exactly.
So
It's not that long.
All of a sudden, the country has made that
much progress
in 3 years.
That's the criticism of the majority. Look, there's a famous quote by Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right? When the Voting Rights Act came.
Who should have retired?
When the Voting Rights Act came up, when she was on the bench, she said, you know, the conservatives said, well, we've made great progress, so we don't need this anymore. She said, I'm paraphrasing, but she said, that's like getting rid of your umbrella in a rainstorm because you're not getting wet.
Yes.
And the question is it still raining? Is it drizzling? Is it clear? People differ strongly on that.
And guess what? It can be clear one day and rain the next. And so that's the inconsistency.
And the crazy part is, go ahead.
I just want to point out the one person, one vote. I think, Bakari, us millennials will have to wrestle with how we're going to leave this earth, and I'm determined to leave it better than I found it. And I think that this decision is actually going to open a rush to reevaluate a lot of things, like you say, are in the Constitution. Because right now you have a hat on that says Utah, and they have more representation in the Senate than the people actually in Alabama have
I
in
got
the
a
Senate.
situation in Utah going on.
I know that's not why you have the hat on.
No, I
but
have it on.
You have it on, and so there are states right
I'm
now that have
supporting
two
the people of
senators.
Utah.
When we're sitting in a state right now that has more population than Utah multiplied by 10, and so if we
You
really
don't like
want to
Utah?
talk about,
I love Utah.
I'm talking about all the states that have smaller populations. If we really want to talk about one person, one vote, and if we really want to go down a path to see what real
Kevin O'Leary did exactly what he always does. He played obtuse, acted arrogant, and was completely condescending. That is exactly why Bakari Sellers finally told him, "Don't be a dick." And honestly, I don't blame him at all. Now, some people claim Bakari lost his cool. I don't buy it. He wasn't raging. He was speaking with raw conviction. My only issue is the phrasing. We already know how the right-wing media works. They'll clip those 4 words to spin a narrative about left-wing hostility, completely ignoring Kevin's blatant disrespect. The real issue is that O'Leary's massive wealth detaches him from reality, interrupting a serious discussion about historical trauma, desegregation, and voter disenfranchisement just to snap. What's your point? Get to it. Is trash behavior. But Kevin knows exactly what he's doing. This clash is the ultimate proof of why we need guardrails like the Voting Rights Act. When billionaires treat minority voting power with this much contempt, it shows you who they are. He does it because he knows the MAGA base will cheer him on, and he'll face 0 consequences. Let's do a reality check. If someone were at that table speaking on issues deeply affecting the Jewish community, would Kevin dare to act like that? Would he snap at them to hurry up? Not a chance. But because it's black voters in the South losing representation, people like O'Leary and Scott Jennings treat it like a game. It's embarrassing. From the outside looking in, it's just sad. The Supreme Court looks completely compromised, like a rubber stamp for the Republican Party to push Donald Trump's agenda. When the highest court only looks out for one side, everyone else gets silenced. Was Bakari right to call out Kevin O'Leary like that, or did he play right into their hands? Let me know in the comments below. Smash that thumbs up, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications. See you guys in the next one.